We have our oral argument set for the Idaho Supreme Court. I'm Greg Pruitt, president of the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. We have been waiting for a very long time to get this Sandpoint lawsuit case up to the Idaho Supreme Court and to finally give the attorneys that are working on this case an opportunity to come out and really present the argument that we wanted to have in the lower courts when we believe the lower court judge just booted this thing down the road and wanted nothing to do with it. Before I get too deep into that, we want to kind of back up and give those of you who don't understand or don't know about this case a quick update on what it's all about. So in August of 2019, there was a festival put on by the Festival at Sandpoint, which is a nonprofit organization. And they temporarily leased, okay, they got use of the park, a park up in Sandpoint, a public park, for a couple weeks. And they've been doing this for a really long time. And up until 2019, they hadn't tried to ban firearms. But there was a garlic festival shooting in California that year, and that apparently had prompted their decision to not allow firearms in these public parks. Okay, Idaho has a very specific statute called the preemption statute. And in this statute, cities and counties are not allowed to regulate the possession of firearms on public property. Okay, certainly in a private home or business or whatever, yeah, you can come up with your own decisions on what you want to do regarding the right to keep bear arms. And the Festival at Sandpoint decided, well, we're going to go ahead and ban firearms in this public park, understanding that the city of Sandpoint doesn't have this authority. They don't have this capability because the preemption law very specifically says you don't. And so we were trying to figure out what the heck was going on, because if the city doesn't have the authority, how can they then just give that authority to some private entity on our public property, right? That was our argument. And so two individuals, Scott Herndon and Jeff Avery. Scott Herndon is a senator-elect, state senator-elect here in Idaho, up in northern Idaho. They went down, they filmed the encounter, they were open carrying, tried to enter and to challenge what was happening. And sure enough, after a lot of discussion and debate and everything else, eventually some Sandpoint police officers, maybe it was just one guy, I can't remember, comes out and is basically just standing there going, yeah, go ahead and try and come on in, right? I mean, it's very obvious from the video that they were not going to let either Scott or Jeff into the festival, into the park for the festival event. And they purchased tickets, they had done all that stuff. And so the Second Amendment Foundation and the ISA afterward joined together and said, let's work together on this lawsuit. You know, we had never done a lawsuit before. The SAF does a lot of legal work, and one of their attorneys, Don Kilmer, works here in Idaho. And then our attorney, Alexandria Kincaid, all of us decided, along with our clients, Scott and Jeff, to put this case forward and going, okay, there's no way. I mean, this doesn't make any sense at all. How can this government agency who has no authority over regulating firearms in public places just give it to somebody else? I mean, what would stop Mayor McLean in Boise from using her power to just say, well, you know what, we'll just let all the city parks in the entire city of Boise be regulated by some nonprofit organization? And so, you know, we're like, this is really dangerous. And so we kick it up to this first judge. I think his last name was Haynes. And sure enough, he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and side with the city, and we'll, you know, yeah, absolutely, they can do that. Didn't even bother hearing the arguments from our attorneys, from our attorney or the SAF attorney on this case. And we were like, what is happening here? And really what we think was he really didn't want anything to do with deciding a Second Amendment case. That's how off it went. And then we made a decision as an organization, along with SAF and Scott and Jeff. Hey, you know what? This is really important. Sets a really dangerous precedent. If all these cities have this giant loophole of we'll just lease it for an entire year, or we'll lease it for 2 years, or whatever the case may be, they've got this giant loophole to get around your right to keep and bear arms on this public property. And so off it went to the Supreme Court, and we've been waiting, and it's a court case, right? So we've been waiting for a very long time for this day, and who knows, maybe the Supreme Court will kick it down the road a little bit further. But as of right now, it's scheduled for February 6th and February 8th to have oral arguments before the Idaho Supreme Court on this issue. We did get some good news. It was all the way back, I think, in August, when the Supreme Court said, we want jurisdiction over this case. Look, I'm not an attorney. I believe that's what our attorneys had said it was called. But basically, from what I gathered, it was, we want to opine on this, okay? We could just kick it back down to a lower court. We could do a number of things with this, but we want it. We want to hear it, okay? Good news or bad news, I think that's more good news that they didn't just immediately kick it back down and say, screw it, we don't care. They felt it was an important enough issue in whatever direction that they wanted to opine on the case. And, some people have asked, well, why not just drop the appeal and go to the legislature? Well, first of all, the legislature, there's no easy answer to this. The legislature, we actually tried in 2022 to push some form of change to the law, and met immediate resistance from the cities, right? The cities are going to freak out if we change the preemption law to what it was intended to be back in 2008. They're going to freak out. They're going to talk about money, and it's going to cost them money and all this other bull crap, okay? A bunch of stuff that just doesn't matter when it comes to your right to be safe and to keep and bear arms, to protect your family in public. And so, there's no easy direction either way. But number one, the Supreme Court will help clarify. If they come down on the right side, then good. We've got some clarification, and we've got something really solid to work with on whether or not we need to tweak a few things. If they come down on the wrong side, then number one, now we can go to the state legislature with some additional ammo and say, look, these guys, the Supreme Court jacked it up. They clearly did not do what the state legislature intended to do in 2008 with preemption. So let's get it fixed right now based on whatever they've opined on this case. And then number two, you'll also know more about your Idaho Supreme Court, because quite frankly, nobody knows. They don't care, right? Everybody pays attention to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the whole state will know after this where these guys stand on this huge, huge Second Amendment issue, which could have nationwide ramifications. And so we are hopeful that they will come down on the right side of this particular case. Maybe it'll be a blending of the two. Maybe they'll say, yeah, okay, on these temporary things, you can't do this, but maybe on a permanent structure that is permanently leased, they can ban. So, I don't know. I mean, they could do a whole bunch of different stuff. We have no idea what to come of this, but we do know we'll at least get to give a very valid argument in the courts, and our attorneys will finally get to present our side of the case, which they have not been able to do so far. So February 6th, February 8th, big days for the ISA, SAF, and gun owners all across the state of Idaho. We hope you guys will kind of keep in touch with us on this particular case, and we look forward to it happening, I guess, during the session. Maybe we'll have a preemption bill after after they make a decision or whatever in February possibly. So with that, if you guys have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments or shoot us an email at president@idahosaa.org, and I'd be happy to try and answer any of your questions regarding this case. Thank you. Take care. God bless.